It was barely past midnight when an unmarked black vehicle pulled into a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Daegu. No flashing lights, no entourage, no red carpet, only silence, and one man quietly opening the car door, stepping into the shadow of the home he hadn't seen in what felt like lifetimes. But why did Kim Taehyung, globally known as BTS's V, return in this way? And why, just hours later, did his neighbors say they heard faint sounds of someone crying? You'd think a global superstar coming home after so long, especially after enduring the intense pressure of mandatory military service, would be met with cameras, celebrations, maybe a live stream watched by millions. But no, this return was different. It was raw, private, and utterly unexpected. But the real question burning behind this silent homecoming is, what made V come home now? For nearly 2 years, fans had only seen glimpses of Taehyung, the soldier, the quiet observer in uniform, the disciplined figure in blurred army photos. Yet, nothing could have prepared anyone for the quiet storm he carried within. After all this time, why was his return unannounced? Why did even his closest friends not post about it? Not even Jungkook, who had been known to share heartfelt words about his young, gave so much as a hint. Was this secrecy by design? Or was V hiding something deeper? Sources close to the family say Taehyung hadn't set foot inside his childhood home since early 2023. He said it would be too hard, a neighbor whispered anonymously. Too many memories, too many ghosts. So what changed? What was strong enough to finally pull him back into those familiar walls where it all began, where his dreams first sparked? That question hung heavy in the night air as V stood before his front gate, hesitating. Did he remember the last time he walked through it? Perhaps the echo of his father's voice still lingered in his mind. Or maybe it was the warmth of his grandmother's laugh that brought him to his knees, right there in the dark, hands trembling as he reached for the key hidden under the old stone pot. Just like always, what happened inside that house in the hours that followed remains a mystery, but something powerful unfolded. According to one close family acquaintance, he walked through each room in silence. He didn't turn on the lights, just wandered, like he was searching for something he left behind years ago. Was it innocence? A part of himself that got lost in the whirlwind of fame, expectations, and sacrifice. Taehyung wasn't just coming home from military service. He was returning from something deeper. Something fans never fully saw. Insiders reveal that V had requested a delayed public statement about his discharge, citing the need for silence and reflection. While most idols returned to thunderous applause and press conferences, V wanted none of it. "Let me find myself before I face the world," he reportedly said to one HYB representative.
What did he mean by that?
Had he changed that much in the military? Or was the transformation far more personal? In the military, V had reportedly become known for his introspective nature. While others spent free time joking or sharing meals, he often sat alone, sketching in notebooks, staring into the trees. His commanding officer allegedly remarked once, "He wasn't the loudest, but he carried a weight that made you pause, like he'd seen more than the rest of us." What was this weight V bore so quietly? And why did it follow him all the way home? The emotional climax, however, didn't come until 3:04 a.m. A neighbor, awakened by soft rustling, peeked through her curtains and saw him sitting alone in the front yard. No phone, no music, just him, sitting cross-legged on the grass, his head bowed. She didn't want to stare, but what she saw next made her breath catch in her throat. He began to cry, she said, barely above a whisper. But it wasn't the kind of cry you hear often.
It was like his whole soul was weeping.
Like he hadn't allowed himself to break down until that moment. Why did V cry like that? What memories had waited for him inside that home? Could it have been the sight of his old room, still filled with photos, notes from fans, drawings he once made? Or maybe it was the silent acknowledgement that time had passed, mercilessly, unapologetically, and he could never truly go back. No camera captured that moment. No fan chant echoed through the trees. It was just Taehyung and the ghosts of who he used to be. Hours later, he vanished again, just as quietly as he had arrived. But this time, he left something behind. A note, A single sheet of handwritten Korean script placed on the small table by the entryway. Only his family read it, but one trusted source who saw a part of it claimed it said, "I came home to remember and to forgive myself." Forgive himself for what? That question now echoes louder than ever. What guilt has V carried through these years of stardom and solitude? Was it the burden of expectation? The regret of not being able to protect someone he loved? Or perhaps the silent pain of losing a part of his youth to a machine that devours innocence in the name of glory? This isn't just a story about a K-pop idol returning home. It's about a human being who walked through fire and came back quietly, with tears instead of applause. Fans are now speculating about what comes next. Will V release a solo song about this journey? Will he address what happened in that house in an upcoming documentary? Rumors are already swirling that HYBE has something planned for later this year, something centered entirely around V's personal story. And yet, even in all this speculation, one thing remains chillingly clear. Not even the most devoted ARMY knew the depth of what Taehyung had been going through. For years, he smiled on stages, shared pieces of his soul in lyrics, posed for magazine covers. But behind it all, a storm brewed quietly until now. And so we ask again, why did BTS cry at 3 a.m.? What did he come home to find? And what parts of himself did he finally set free on that quiet, moonlit night? Stay tuned, because the story of V's homecoming is far from over. What comes next, after the tears have dried and the quiet night recedes? In the days following his arrival and swift departure, the peace of Taehyung's childhood home turned almost reverent, like a shrine to a moment that slipped through time. Inside, each room carried a different echo. His old bedroom remained untouched, the pale green walls still lined with fan letters, handwritten notes, and narrow photo frames. A lone guitar lay by the window, its strings gathering a thin sheen of dust. A half-finished painting sat leaned against the wall, an unfinished dream, paused by the rush of life on stage. IT was here that V had, we'd say, lost a part of himself. On day one at the ARMY base, pressed into uniform and discipline, surely he shoved aside these keepsakes, the things that tethered him to home, to dreams held in starlight, not barracks. Yet on that first night back, he stayed in that room the longest. He sat on the bed and let his body slump, as though the physical weight of home was almost too much. Over and over, he whispered to himself, "I'm still me." But who was me then? And who is me now? Outside, the media vultures gathered, but they sensed something sacred in what had occurred. Cameras flashed at a distance over the fence as silence fluttered from the house. There was no statement, no PR spin. HYBE, respecting Taehyung's wishes, asked for privacy. But in the hush lay salvation. We move now to hear from his mother, met quietly at the rear of the property on that gray morning. She carried a single daisy pin to her jacket, Taehyung's favorite. She looked tired, solemn, yet something in her eyes glimmered with an inner peace. He came home to rediscover his heart, she said softly. He needed to feel it beat at his own pace, not to the rhythm of applause, but to the rhythm of home. She paused, her voice thick. That night, he cried because he missed himself. What's captivating about this moment is its honesty. A global superstar, someone whose every move is documented, commodified, shared, breaking down in silence, not for the world, but for the parts of himself that the world couldn't see. Yet V didn't come home empty-handed. Reports say he carried a small canvas under his arm, only 12 inches square. On it, at the small kitchen table, under the loving hum of the overhead light, he painted something honest, a watercolor of the old gate, half lit by a lantern. He added a slip of paper at the bottom. To guard this place, guard me. Why this painting? Perhaps it was his way of giving back, returning the gift of safety, innocence, and belonging that he'd felt growing up here. And as for guard me, there's an unspoken plea. He's not only promising to protect this home, but he asks it to protect him in return, from the cost of returning to stages, from the price of fame. Then came the letters. Hundreds of letters arrived at local post offices over the next days, written by V himself, then returned. No stamp, only V's handwriting. Recipients found them slid into their mailboxes, each containing a single question. What are you guarding? Some fans received them. One anonymous recipient shared, I opened it, and it asked simply, what are you guarding? My heart just stopped. The emotional resonance was immediate. A superstar reaching out with vulnerability, inviting us, fans, strangers, neighbors, to reflect on what grounds us. Social media exploded. ARMY began to post their answers, what they guarded in their lives. Hope, dreams, family ties, self-worth. The hashtag #GuardWhatMatters trended globally. But overshadowing that was the hint of something deeper. That V was preparing to share more, perhaps through music, or an art exhibit, or an upcoming documentary. Insider sources at HYB, speaking under condition of anonymity, say a personal,